it appears, from what we can tell, that the love-in with Putin has cooled to a certain extent, so that if there were to be a ceasefire at this stage, I don't think the Americans would either be inclined or in a position to force the kind of partition where basically the Russians are given a lot more territory than they have managed to take militarily. I don't think that is on.
And here with me on Pinar and Friends, Adam Boulton, Anna Mihilova, and Harriet Alexander on the line from stateside. Talk a bit about Ukraine now, because this is going to be, one imagines, a very, very potentially really important week. We've got Donald Trump just again today talking to the media and telling us that he thinks there will be a deal between Russia and Ukraine. Hard to see in the war in Ukraine, hard to see where that might be coming from. I mean, there will be Steve Witkoff, his special envoy, is going to be in London meeting the Russian and Ukrainian side. And remember, this is after, a couple of days after Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, told the world that he and America and the administration were contemplating walking away from the Ukraine war if there was no progress towards a ceasefire. And that statement made a very loud noise indeed. What did that mean, walking away from Ukraine? Did that mean just giving up on Ukraine, washing America's hands of the entire thing? Does that mean going back to just denying Ukraine the help that it's been getting from America, whether it's supplies, ammunition, and intelligence? Because if that's the case, well, that overturns the entire picture on the ground there in Ukraine, Adam, doesn't it? I mean, it is imaginable that is the case.
Yes, it is imaginable, but one has to ask oneself whether the Trump administration has done anything particularly good or constructive for the Ukrainians' effort to fight against Russian aggression so far. And
I suppose they provided that intelligence and those supply of munitions.
Not a lot. I mean, the answer is they haven't. I think what is significant about this is it appears, from what we can tell, that the love-in with Putin has cooled to a certain extent, so that if there were to be a ceasefire at this stage, I don't think the Americans would either be inclined or in a position to force the kind of partition where basically the Russians are given a lot more territory than they have managed to take militarily. I don't think that is on. So in that sense, I think, if there's a ceasefire, well and good, just as, Ukraine was supporting the idea of a ceasefire over Easter, although they say the Russians broke it, the Russians say the Ukrainians broke it. And I think this is where it gets quite significant. I mean, maybe Putin actually quite wants a ceasefire. Maybe he's not breaking through. He's not doing as well as he thought he might. And it may be that he thinks it's time for a pause at some level. And that, as far as stopping the killing, which has always been the preoccupation of Donald Trump, that could be good news.
Oh, we don't know, Harry. What would be your educated guess about this? I mean, Donald Trump does sound confident in the way that he does about whatever he says, that there might be news of a deal. I mean, what's your feeling?
Yeah, he sounds confident, but I think that's probably because it's part of his brand, isn't it? I mean, how many times have we heard reference the art of the deal? And he still very much believes his own hype that he is a deal maker and that he is somebody who can bring people to the table and sort of bash heads together and get them to agree on things, even when the evidence so far has proved that is not as easy as he would have thought. Remember, he said he would solve it on day one. I mean, my thought is really that perhaps they are laying the groundwork for the United States to walk away from this. Certainly, people like J.D. Vance would be very happy to see America disengage from Ukraine, stop funding the Ukraine effort to resist Russia. And Marco Rubio perhaps was saying that when he said, you've got to sort this out or else we will move on.
And it would, Anna, wouldn't it? Just tilt the balance significantly in favor of Russia were that to be the case. The intelligence from America is used to detect and to deal with the threat of missile attacks into Ukraine. It gives the Ukrainian forces on the ground information and intelligence on targets, where to strike, and how. And this stuff is useful. Without that, it is hard to see European friends of Ukraine filling in that void.
That's right. And of course, we did have Keir Starmer speaking to President Zelensky today. He issued a statement emphasizing just how much the UK continues its ironclad support for Ukraine. But as you say, that doesn't change the picture if the US pulls out. And I think the bigger game changer won't just be if the US stops supporting Ukraine with arms and intelligence, but also continues this realignment of the geopolitical world order and actually deepens cooperation with, its former total arch rival and an enemy, Russia. So if you see the US, even just on the economy, getting closer with Moscow, and as was already hinted, Donald Trump possibly going to Moscow, Putin going to Washington, anything like that will be a major blow to Ukraine.
Yeah, the president has been, again, on social media, talking about doing big business with Russia. Now, that would be a very significant turnaround. And Harriet, you do kind of get that mood music that Steve Witkoff is very much looking for that kind of angle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Witkoff, who, as you said, is in London right now, he is somebody who said that he doesn't see Putin as a bad guy. That was in an interview with Tucker Carlson a few weeks ago. Witkoff has admitted that it's been an awful lot harder than he suspected, which I think probably gave some old Russia hands kind of cause to raise their eyebrows slightly. This idea that it was going to be easy to end this conflict. I think, it comes back again to this idea that the Trump administration is not as ideologically committed to this in the way that the Biden administration was. Joe Biden very much saw it as important for America to be the leader of the free world and standing up for Ukraine, for its democracy against Russian aggression. Whereas Trump sees it in far more transactional terms. He thinks, what are we getting out of this? And that's why he came up with this idea. Well, the Ukrainians came up with it. Trump leapt on it. This idea of the minerals agreement, the rare earth agreement, which has sort of got a bit bogged down, really, and mired in all of the complications of everything else. So it's not been as easy as Trump thought. And I think there is a real possibility that Trump could, in fact, just say, do you know what? We've spent too long on this. It's time to move on, as they said.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll watch that this week. That meeting in London is going to be potentially so important. Adam, I really want to get your thought on this confrontation that's now brewed up over the last 48 hours or just since the beginning of the weekend between the president and Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, the American Central Bank. Donald Trump just enormously impatient to see cuts in interest rates in America. Jerome Powell is not giving him those cuts, and the president pretty nakedly making it clear he'd like to get rid of Jerome Powell. It's not clear legally whether that's possible. There's a lot of nerves around this.
It's not legally possible at the moment, but there is stuff going through the American courts which could give the president greater powers to fire federal employees. I mean, Jerome Powell is only going to be there until next year anyway. His second term will run out then. He's made it quite clear that he believes he can't be fired. And, what we have to understand about this is we know that Donald Trump used to be the man who used to boast about his impact on the stock market and all the rest of it. Now, since he's introduced his tariff plans, the stock market has gone in the other direction. The reason, as you say, why he's desperate for interest rate cuts is because he believes that would fillip the stock market and possibly hide the consequences of some of the things that he's done. Jerome Powell and indeed the rest of the Federal Reserve Board are of the view that to cut interest rates now would simply fuel inflation, which of course would lead to increases in the cost of living, which we're already seeing quite dramatically in the United States, even although that was one of the issues that told against the Biden administration. So it seems to me that what Trump is doing really is trying to divert the blame. He's trying to say to the American public, don't blame me, it's this dreadful guy in a suit, Jerome Powell, who is holding up Making America Great Again, which he's very skillful at. But actually, it's probably more useful to him, given that his own economic plans are not going very well. It's probably more useful to him to have Jerome Powell there to be shouted at than to get rid of him and replace him with someone else of his own choice.
That's
and of course, the other irony is that, guess what? Jerome Powell was President Trump's choice during his first term.
Yes. I was listening to an American economist on one of the US networks over the weekend there, saying if the president got his way, his stated way, with Jerome Powell and managed to put in someone who was more willing to cut interest rates, to order from the president, that it would make the turmoil in the markets that we've seen so far, including on the American debt markets, look like a tea party.
Yeah, I think you're right. Again, which is why I think it's there's a lot of theatre in this. Of shouting about it to blame him rather than actually doing it, because that might well be a consequence. But then Donald Trump was told what the consequences of his initial Liberation Day tariff announcements would be, and he ignored that.
Yeah, I mean, so much to watch, Harriet. And I think as we speak, the finance ministers are getting together in Washington, aren't they, for their IMF meeting? Not sure what's going to come out of that.
Yes, I mean, that's going to be definitely one to watch, isn't it? I was just thinking about Adam's point about how having Powell there might be a useful sort of kicking horse for Trump to blame everything on Jerome Powell, who he hired. But also remember that all these trade agreements with Mexico and Canada that he's railing against, those are the trade agreements that Trump himself created. Biden didn't touch them. Those are the existing ones. So, people have quite short memories when it comes to this. But yes, the IMF meetings this week in DC going to be fascinating. So much on the table for them all. The tariffs, people are sort of reeling, and it's going to be all the finance ministers trying to negotiate the best possible terms.
Yeah.
But good luck with that.
Yeah, well, good luck with that. And Harriet there in the USA.